Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the last meeting of the year and December's Planning Application Committee. Eddie, if I could go to you, please, for the fire drill, and then rather than stopping and starting again, if you could go straight to apologies for absence.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Chair. So there's no fire drill planned for tonight. So if you hear a loud and continuous ring, please make your way down the stairs next to the lift promptly and calmly. Do not use the lift, and the fire exit in the council chamber should only be used as a last resort. The assembly point is located in the Knoll Road car park and is indicated by a green sign. And lastly, if you have reduced mobility and the fire alarm rings, please let yourself be known to me. And apologies for absence. We've received them from councillors Betton, Rowlands, Noble, and Councillor Thompson. You'll notice that Councillor Thompson and Councillor Noble are online. Councillor Rates is subbing for Councillor Noble. Councillor Quinn is subbing for Councillor Rowlands. Councillor David Whitcroft is subbing for Councillor Betton, and Councillor MacDonald is subbing for Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Is everybody happy that I sign the minutes of the 23rd of November 2023? Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. There's a mistake in the minutes on page 7. It's at the top of the page. It relates to point 29p. I voted against that application. It's not in the minutes.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Wilson. As per our previous correspondence, that's been updated in the minutes online and is also the minutes which Councillor Wheeler's got there.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I can confirm it's correct in the minutes in front of me. Thank you. Moving on, can I have declarations of interest, please, in relation to the two applications that we're hearing, or if you want to do them one at a time, if anyone has any declarations? Okay, I will make a declaration in relation to application number 0571, Tesco Station Road, Chobham. I did speak against the original application for the Tesco store about 11 years ago, prior to me being a councillor. I live relatively close to the store. I'm a regular shopper in the store, but I have been told that there is no need to declare any further interest. Thank you. If we could move to Melissa, please, for the report on Tesco's.
So the application site is Tesco Station Road, Chobham. The application seeks advertisement consent for 9 new adverts. The application site is located here, outlined in red. To the west is an empty building which was previously a restaurant, and to the east is a building which has a lawful use of the office. The site is located within the Chobham Conservation Area. So here are the images and plans of the previous signs. This includes 2 fascia signs. One was externally illuminated by Swanlet lighting, projecting sign which was also externally illuminated. There were also 2 additional signs relating to a disabled parking space and entrance into the car park. So up there you've got the pictures and the plan. So the application seeks advertisement consent for a total of 9 adverts. During the course of the application, the proposal has been amended to remove the blue fascia sign and the internally illuminated sign. So the proposal now includes a fascia sign which is externally illuminated by the existing Swannet lighting, a projecting sign on the front elevation which is non-illuminated, 3 vinyl adverts on the ground floor front elevation, 1 vinyl and a plain frosted glass on the eastern elevation ground floor flank wall, and 2 directional signs for the car park on the eastern boundary fence, and a disabled parking sign on the ground floor front elevation of the building. The application is retrospective as all adverts have now been erected. So here are some photos of the sites installed. So you can see the fascia sign and the projecting sign and a couple of the vinyls in these images. And then here is the disabled sign, the vinyl on the corner and the signs on the fence advertising the car park. So due to the location of the building set back from the highway compared to this building that's located here, there are limited views of the side elevation of the building as you drive along Station Road. While there would be an increased number of adverts, it is considered these are broken up with sufficient space between them as not to dominate the front elevation of the building. The proposal does not result in an increased level of illumination or lights and would result in a reduction of signs which are illuminated. And then there's another long-range image photo, which is a bit closer, where you can start to see the vinyl on the corner comes into image. These are a couple of photos that have been taken this evening, which shows that none of the signs aren't internally illuminated and the vinyls don't allow light through them. The proposal has been amended and the heritage consultant has raised no objection. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions.
Thank you, Melissa. Do any members have this application should have been or would have normally have been determined at the officer level, but it was called in by Councillor Tedder, I believe. Thank you. Are there anyone that wishes to comment on this application? Thank you, Councillor Garrett.
Is that me? Yes, it is. It's more of it's a question related to the fact that they've already put them in. Tesco's obviously know what planning law is, and they obviously have flouted that by going straight ahead and putting the signs up, and then have come to us and asked us to put it in. So I just want to understand how, because obviously we can refuse it, in which case they have to take it down, or we will obviously move forward with it and they'll be right. But someone like Tesco's knows they have to put planning application in for the signs, I would suspect. So why, and I know it's an assumption on our part, why did they not? That's basically my question.
Obviously, I can't speak for Tesco's themselves. The application has been in for a number of months while we've negotiated, but they will know that if they install the signs, it's at their own risk, and if we chose to refuse the application this evening, then the enforcement team could take action.
So it's been for a couple of months. Were the signs up before they started, or did they put the signs up once the application went in?
Signs have gone up while the application's been in.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tedder, just for those online and listening, Councillor Tedder isn't here as a member of the application committee, but is able to speak on the application as a ward member. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I asked for this to be called in because the original application was very hard fought over many months, and eventually there was an agreed plan for lighting and advertising. It wasn't done easily because it is in the conservation area. And if we do something in the conservation area, then this will reflect back up the high street. I know you've got to look at each plan on its own, but this will reflect back up the high street. And Chobham has fought very hard to keep its very unique status in its high street. And if you look, we don't have, we're very careful about the lighting and the advertising because we want to keep it like that because it's special. And this is just going against everything that people wanted and asked for, and it is at the entrance to the village, and it will affect the character of the village. So I would ask that you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tedder. Anybody else before I come in with a couple of comments? Okay, so I have got a couple of comments on this application and also on the officer's report. Which I have mentioned previously to the officer, but I see that the comments are still there. So maybe she'd like to come back on them. During the report, you said that there would be a reduction in signs that are externally illuminated. My understanding is that the current illumination is as is. and there is no reduction, but it stands as the current illumination was allowed. So I just want to make sure that members of the committee aren't misled to think that there is a reduction when I don't believe that there is. There's a reduction in lit signs from the new application, and I'm very grateful to the officers that have obviously negotiated very heavily with Tesco's to go back to the swan lighting and having that sign, that hanging sign, non-illuminated, but they haven't been illuminated with anything other than the current lighting which stands. In 8.2, there is a comment that is made that the signs would not be visible and wouldn't see the neighbours. The neighbours have raised an objection to this sign on the basis that they will see it and they feel that it will impact their amenity. As you have corrected in the update, there is not a public house next door. So on one side of Tesco's Express, so the eastern side, we have a locally listed building, which I think was originally either a telephone exchange. I'm looking to Councillor Tedder here to confirm or deny, but I think it was either the original telephone exchange or was possibly built for the station that never arrived in Station Road, but it's a fairly historical business building. And then next door but one, we have the locally listed village hall, not a church hall, as per the officer's report. The officer's report in the justification for the additional signs says that there is a totem pole that is visible at the Esso petrol station on the approach. This approach to the village was actually mentioned in the character assessment of the village that was done with the conservation area, and it is highlighted as per the report that it is a leafy area. There are fields, open fields, up until the point that you get to the building, the locally listed building, next door to the Tesco's store. And opposite the Tesco's store, there is the memorial, the war memorial, which forms part of the recreation ground. So you've got a very leafy and non-urban approach to the village. As you round the road past Tesco's, it isn't actually till you're virtually at the garage that you can actually see the totem pole, because there is greenery and trees that overhang it. And the garage itself was very closely conditioned to have a slate roof, paved tiles, brick pillars to keep it in line with the sort of Victorian cottages that sit either side of it. And it is immediately at the end of the high street, which has more locally listed buildings than anywhere else. More listed buildings than anywhere else within Surrey Heath. My concern with this application is that if we allow it, the next time there is a character assessment done within the village, that area will be more urban because it will have more advertisements, it will have the associated clutter. As Councillor Garrett alluded to at the beginning, Tesco's know the score, that we're not meant to be any trolleys outside the store, and as you saw in an earlier picture that the officer presented, they've got trolleys outside the store and they've got round having no store by not anchoring them to anything. So they're just loose outside, and so therefore that's not seen as constituting a store. So the clutter that is associated with this is quite pronounced in comparison to how it looked before. And as Councillor Tedder has said, it took about 18 months later for Tesco's to open through extreme negotiation and a lot of conditions to make sure that the character area was not impacted. I don't know how many on this committee were actually there. Possibly Councillor White is the only one in the room that was there for that committee meeting. So I'm sure Councillor White, you probably recall it went on very late from memory. I have to say I can't support the officer's recommendation on the basis that the accumulation of the advertising will have a negative impact on the conservation area, the approach to the village, which is in the character assessment. and isn't necessary for the store, which is very successful and, as I said, very popular with me. So, I don't know. So, are there any other comments that anyone would like to make on that? Councillor Quinn.
So just to open up the debate about it, I guess, I can't really, to be honest with you, Chair, see a huge impact of, on visual amenity from the front, so from the vinyls and the signs on the front of the shop. But the vinyl on the side of the shop, I'd say that's the worst. Maybe you'd agree with me, that's the worst advertisement. Would there be a case potentially for a middle ground to say that that one should not be permitted as an amendment to what the officers recommend, while allowing the signs and vinyls on the front and for the car park?
I'm happy to be corrected by the officers present, but my understanding is that we must consider the application in the whole, and therefore it's an all or nothing. I agree with you, that is the one with the greatest impact.
You will be able to do a split decision because it's an advertisement consent, so if you chose to pursue that way, you could do a split decision and grant all the other ones via the one on the corner if you so wished.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just curious to get the officers' feedback on the points that Councillor Wheeler raised, and specifically what the point of planning would be that Councillor Wheeler was raising in terms of how we could not approve this application and their perspective on it. Thank you.
Just to clarify, are you asking what you could object to the signs on? Is that?
Well, there are a number of points in Councillor Wheeler's statement. There was the one around whether it was more illuminations, less illuminations, so it'd be great to get your feedback on that. And then I think there was a consideration around the conservation impact. And just, as I understand it, we've always got to do it on the basis of planning law, decisions based on planning law. So I'm just wondering what the point of which point that would refer to.
So on
just for my information and education, thank you.
Yeah, no, so on the illumination, so the report says there is a reduction, because I can go back to it. Can you pull the slides back up? So here's the photo of the existing, so you have the swan lake lighting here, and then this sign here was also externally illuminated. So now on the current proposal, only the fascia sign here is externally illuminated. This sign here is not illuminated, which you can then see in the images from this evening, that sign isn't illuminated. So there is a reduction of illuminated signs at the site. So that's where the report is coming from. It's the officer's view that the introduction of the additional adverts doesn't result in harm to the conservation area. So it would be for members to decide if they felt that the additional signs did result in harm.
Councillor Garrett.
Just reference the illuminated signs. Are they switched off when the store is shut? Because, okay, I mean, the store shuts at 11 o'clock, so they're obviously on for quite a period of time. But do they actually switch them off? Because obviously in a village, light like that, obviously late at night is going to be quite annoying. And I don't know if they are left on. If they leave them on, can we make sure they turn them off? Although someone will have to go round and make sure they do.
It's conditional that they had to be switched off at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, so the lighting that is there at the moment is part of the original application's lighting. And I'm not 100% sure, but being told to my left here that there is a condition on the original application that restricts the lighting to be turned off at 10 p.m. and that would form part of that.
I don't check on a nightly basis, I have to be honest, but the condition that it had to be turned off at 10 o'clock, I'm assuming that we would see a continuation of that condition if the committee were minded to approve. I'd like to take some further advice on the splitting of the decision, given that it's an advertising consent, to say, can we go ahead and approve those at the front of the beginning of the building and disallow the one advertising sign that faces...
Can I please advise members, if you are looking to do a split decision on this application, you need to have robust reasons to refuse this application tonight. And you need to see what is the harm of that vinyl on that side of that building. If you look at the case officer's presentation, can you just go back to the previous, on the approach to the building, it's shielded by that building next door and you can't see it. Far range views, you can't see it at all. And also in terms of the nighttime shots, it's not internally illuminated either. So members have to be very careful if they're looking to refuse on the vinyl, what is the harm to the conservation area and what is the impact of the conservation area as well.
Go to Councillor White and then to Councillor Quinn.
So we're going to great pains to saying that that particular sign can't be seen because it's shielded by the building. Why is it there if it can't be seen? Why should it be there?
Councillor Quinn.
Well, on one of those photos, you could actually see the sign on the side. So that would be the distinction, I think, between the ones on the front and the one on the side. Would be that you could actually see it in the closer but far away shot.
I think what I'm trying to say here is like, what is the harm between that side vinyl to the front elevation sort of vinyl as well? That's what you need to assess in terms of the harm to the building and the conservation area.
Can we condition to say that there must be no internal illumination of those signs? Can we add that as a condition? Because I have to say the view when you can't see them is not the view that I am familiar with. So whether or not there is a decal that can and can't, that could potentially be removed behind, which is letting it be less obvious, can we add that condition?
So there is a condition 4 on the officer's report that says that there can't be any internally illuminated signs. So that would cover. I think that would cover your point.
Which page is that? Sorry.
Page 16.
It's page 16, condition 4.
I would suggest that we could potentially tighten that to say that should not include any internal illumination that would make the signs more prominent or would illuminate the signs approved, because it's a very slightly different, because they're not illuminated. They can be not illuminated internally, but they can still have illumination from internal lighting. And there's a variance. So again, just for members' reference, the front of the building has to have, they're meant to have tinted glass. They didn't comply with that. They put decals up to shield the lighting, the pollution of the internal store lighting, and to prevent the clutter from the internal store being visible from the outside, which was one of the conditions in the conservation area. So there could be lighting that spills out from inside. So if we could just look at strengthening the wording of that a little bit.
That's agreed, Chair. That's fine.
So my understanding as to where we've got to is we've got an officer's recommendation for approval for all of the signs. We've got a potential amendment to say approve all of the signs, excluding the one on the side. How do we go about voting on this, please?
I think, Chair, you need to vote on the actual recommendation in front of us and then decide if you want to do a split decision afterwards.
Okay, we have an officer's recommendation for approval. Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Whitfield. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor O'Mahony. All those in favour?
Voting in favour of the officer's recommendation, councillors Garrett, Glowett, O'Mahony, Rakes, MacDonald, David Whitcroft, Helen Whitcroft, Richard Wilson.
Are those against?
Voting against, councillors Wheeler, Quinn and White.
Thank you. I think that's everyone. There are no abstentions, yes? So the application is approved.
This is 8 to 3.
8 to 3. Thank you. So now across to Mr. Carty for application number 0891, 42 to 44 London Road, Bagshot.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal relates to an extra care 46 apartment scheme granted plan permission on appeal. The development is now built but not completed. Landscape and internal works are still required. The original application was refused permission against the officer recommendation with refusal reasons on character and design and lack of securing contributions towards SAM and SANG. These are set out on page 50 of the agenda report. The legal agreement with its attached operational management plan was provided for the appeal to demonstrate to the inspector that the development was extra care accommodation with a minimum age for residents needing care to a minimum of 70 years. Partners of such residents would have a minimum age of 60 years. This application has been referred to committee to consider reducing the minimum age of residents for the development needing care from 70 to 60 years. Please note the update and I'll briefly lead you through the plans and photos. This is the application site. It's located off London Road in the settlement of Bagshot. Half Moon Street and the central Bagshot beyond lie to the rear of the site. This is the approved layout for the development. The principal access is from London Road, with car parking principally to the northeast flank. A pedestrian link is to be provided to the rear. Here are the main approved elevations. The top drawing is the front elevation facing London Road, and the bottom drawing is the side elevation facing the main car park. The 2 parking spaces are to be provided. Here is the previous development on the site. It's the Jack's Fish and Chip Shop. And here is the front corner of the development, with the flank of the development to the left and the frontage onto London Road to the right, and the rear of the development. As indicated, the matter in front of members to resolve relates solely to the proposed reduction in the minimum age of future residents needing care from 70 to 60 years, with no change to the minimum age of their partners set at 60 years. The minimum age for occupants was not a factor during the assessment of the application, set out in the officer report from page 53 of this agenda report. Such matters would normally be controlled by condition. However, this age restriction was provided in the legal agreement and linked operational management plan and was considered in paragraph 27 of the appeal decision by the inspector, set out from page 42 of the agenda report. The inspector considered the legal agreement and operational management plan, which includes wider management of extra care needs and secure SPA and mitigation, was a certified executable legal agreement indicating that it was necessary to meet the SPA avoidance strategy and meet identified needs for such specialist accommodation. The level of parking was agreed by the County Highway Authority, the Plan Committee in not adding a reason for refusal on this ground, and by the inspector who considered the parking level of about 0.7 spaces per apartment to be acceptable. For the proposed change, which is also supported by the County Highway Authority, It's not considered that this would have it's considered this would have a very limited impact on parking demand for the site. The difference relates to the relates to the minimum age of residents needing care and the likelihood of increase in parking demand. The application proposal is supported by the NHS Integrated Care Board and the Surrey County Council Adult Social Care Team by increasing the availability of extra care accommodation where there is a demonstrated need. The comments also of the applicant on the update are also noted. Under these circumstances, it's considered by officers that the age limit for future residents needing care can be amended as per the application. The application proposal is supported with a recommendation to approve this amendment to the legal agreement and operational management plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before I throw it open I just want to be absolutely clear for the members of the committee. The reduction in age is only for those people that are requiring care. Their partners remain unchanged. And I'm assuming that very often those that require the extra care are not the drivers anyway.
They're less likely to be, yes.
Thank you. Are there any member comments on this application? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. First question is, the first page of this agenda item says 46 extra care apartments, and that says 49. So are 3 of those staffing, or is it actually care? Sorry.
Apologise as a parent. There's a mistake there. It's 46.
It's 46. Okay, cool. Thank you. My question then is related to parking. I get the point that we're saying about the person being cared for is being reduced to 60. The person that their partner is likely to be still 70. No? Okay. Just guys want clarification on that.
That they remain at 60 years.
Both partner and so both.
Yeah, the person not needing care remains at 60.
Okay.
As a minimum age.
Okay. So I still have an issue with the parking. I mean, it's an old chestnut, I know, but you've got 46 apartments. You've got 17 one-bedroom, 29 two-bedroom, 25 spaces, 7 for visitors and staff. It doesn't sound like, and I know we had this discussion when it came originally, and my concern is, and I know we're talking about the age thing, but whether that affects the number of cars or not, I suppose we're not going to know. My concern is that Bagshot will suddenly become an issue with parking again. And I know it's something we may not be able to discuss because it's already been approved. But I think I would like on record that I will still have a concern with the parking, no matter all the provisos and the exceptions, etc. I personally would still have an issue with the parking. And I suppose my last comment is someone hasn't done their marketing right in the first place for the fact that we were building for 70 years and we're now reducing it to 60. That's just a personal thought. Thank you.
Just to reflect on paragraph 33 of the appeal decision, midway down page 44, the inspector goes into detail about the parking pressures in the area and local concerns about that. But his conclusions on that matter is that the level of parking is appropriate for that use.
Councillor White.
He obviously doesn't live in Bagshot. We've got a big problem with parking on the A30 with a care home further up. They can constantly park on the grass verges up and down the London Road. That facility is not available outside of this particular care home, extra care, whatever you want to call it. If you've got 60-year-olds, whether their partners are not the ones being cared for, they're going to want to drive. If you've got someone that you're caring for, you're not going to want to rely on buses, trains and walking. You're going to want to have a car. 32 parking spaces for that particular development was never okay, especially with staff and whatever. So that's my main concern. I think Sean said most things, but there is nowhere other than the car park in Bagshot which people are not going to want to walk to park their car, and they're certainly not going to want to leave it there overnight. purely because of the lighting. So there you go, parking. And it's just, I can't think of the right words at the moment. It's just silly, because the reason it was 70 to start with was that those 70-year-olds nearly in care would not be driving. You bring the age down, whether it's the carer or the person being cared, one of those is going to want to drive. So the 32 places is just going to be a joke, and we're going to have mayhem on the roads.
Just very briefly, really, on this matter of parking. You would expect, if there's somebody in 70 that needs care and somebody in their 60s not needing care, you're moving the age of the person needing care. The most likely driver will be the one that doesn't need care. So you're looking at maybe the actual number of people that would increase the parking demand may be quite small because of that. I think that's the sort of point. And also going back to what the inspector said in terms of the sustainability of the site, it's in the village centre. He felt the level of parking was appropriate for this type of use.
Councillor White, I'll let you come back.
It's just a flippant comment, and I do apologise, but we're going to be knocking on the doors of people and asking them whether they need care or whether they're able-bodied, because I think these are going to be sold as ordinary retirement flats. I don't think, you know, I know it's conditioned that it is for people needing care, but how do you monitor that?
In the same way that if there is a complaint about the occupancy, it would become a corporate enforcement matter to deal with. But the whole basis of the people moving in is that they need a care, and there's a care package for them. For at least the lead person, the person needing care. They wouldn't go into it, they have to pay an extra fee for having that package. And if you don't need the care, you wouldn't be there.
Okay, we've got Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, sorry, this is a silly question, but do we have any understanding of what the ratio is between the residents and the staff at this location? Because if we're saying that these people need care, there clearly would be staff to support them. And how many of these parking spaces are therefore taken up by staff? Typically, having spent 2 years visiting a care home, and by the way, there never was a parking space ever in that care home, so luckily I was within walking distance. I think the day shift would be the peak for staff, because you've clearly got a lot of activity at that point. But do we understand that? Because I think that might give some further insight into Councillor Garrett and Councillor White's points around some of the challenges here on parking.
Well, 11, is it? Okay. Well, Mr. Carty is double checking. I will just remind, unfortunately, we're not, the level of, we objected to this application in committee. It went to appeal. That appeal was upheld, and the inspector felt that the level of parking was acceptable. So there is nothing we can do about the level of parking unless we feel that reducing the number of the age of the residents to 60 from 70, and that's those people that require care, is going to have a significant impact on that. I'll let Mr. Carty come in on that in terms of the officer's report, the inspector's report.
I was going to but what it is that condition 10 says that 7 spaces should be provided and made available for staff and visitors. I think that is a minimum. So that's where you talk about staff parking. That's the level. We won't have that detail. We won't have that detail. But because they're part-time, they won't be there. There won't be a proportion of them that we're there all the time, you know, at different times. If you've got 11 part-timers, you wouldn't have them there all the time. So you would take a proportion of that.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. So just for complete clarity, and I apologise, I'm coming to this fairly late. I did read the papers earlier in the week, but I wasn't expecting to be here as a sub. Otherwise, I would have re-looked at them. But when it went to appeal, it was on the basis of the residents being 70. Is that correct?
No, it was in the deliberations through the appeal, the legal agreement that was provided for the inspector put that stipulation in. So it only came apparent during the appeal process.
So again, just for clarity, this request to drop it to 60 has happened after the appeal?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Quinn.
So I think, as you said, Chair, for me, the thing is that the number of car parking spaces, whether we like it or not, has been approved. And it's fair enough, that we raised concerns about that the council had when it first came to committee. But I'm not really convinced that lowering the age to 60, it might mean a couple more cars. Of course, the vast majority of people who need care, if we trust that these places are being used for care, I think will continue to be over 60s, but potentially they've identified a handful of people in their 60s who will need care too. So there's it's worth noting kind of a slippery slope effect of, if they've got planning permission with these conditions, are they trying to erode them by coming back over time? But I really think that this is only going to be potentially a couple more cars and is not something significant if it gives them more flexibility to look after more people.
Mr Carty first, and then I'll go to Councillor Garrett.
Yeah, just a very, very brief on that point. The comments from the adult social care county, they say it's unusual to have such an older age limit, minimum age limit. They said they're more typically 55 to 60 is a more typical arrangement. So you couldn't see them going below 55, for example, to answer one of your points there. But 60 is a more normal timing, minimum age rather than 70.
I suppose the one thing we won't know is whether or not the 70 age group had a direct impact on the planning inspector's decision to approve. Councillor Garrett.
Following on from that, can we make a condition that they don't come back for another bite of the cherry? So they could come back and say we want it to be 55, for instance.
We have to deal with what's in front of us.
Okay, done. Thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments? Councillor O'Mahony.
Especially for the older demographics. So,
2 points that I can answer back, quite separate points. There is a national need for care homes, but in this area the need is for extra care apartments, which is a very different beast. Care homes are more like your nursing homes type accommodation, where the people in there are frail and need care all the time. This is sort of somewhere between that and a sheltered housing scheme, where the people in there need care, but they've got their apartments, they have support, they have things like an on-site restaurant that they can use, but they're not in a care home. They're sort of somewhere between,
right?
Sheltered and a sort of care apartments. At the extra care apartments, in the summer we had a couple of applications came through from the county, where they were driven by a need for extra care, and they said at the time there is no need for the care homes, and as there's 3 or 4 in that area, you understand why we have sufficient. Now then, what was the other point? Lost my train of thought. Sorry? The application? No, that wasn't what I was going to say. No. I went on a bit too long about the first point, I'm afraid.
There's a shortage of this accommodation across the UK already. So
yeah.
I can't imagine they'd have differty filling it with people 70 years and above. So
yeah, they've said in their they gave us a statement which has been summarised on the updates about that they were looking at marketing, and I think there was some interest in people between 60 and 70 years to come into the development, which is why that was the start of the. McCuff and Stone, their developments are normally older than that, but because they had that interest, that's why they came forward with this application.
okay, thank you.
Councillor White. Is it a new point? viewpoint?
Yeah, ish. This is not a care home. These are apartments that have the facility for assisted care, but they are independent apartments. This is not a care home.
No, this is extra care apartments, which is a different beast, yes.
So obviously there's an officer's recommendation for approval. If it is to be refused, all we can consider is the refusal, and please keep me true on this, is on the fact that we feel that reducing the age of the person that needs additional care from 70 to 60 will have a material impact on the need for parking. Everything else is approved, so that is literally it, yeah? So on that basis, there is an officer recommendation for approval. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Quinn, do I have a seconder? Councillor Helen Whitcroft, all those in favour?
That is Councillors Garrett, O'Mahony, Rakes, Quinn, MacDonald, David Whitcroft, Helen Whitcroft, Wilson and Wheeler.
Those against?
Councillor Valerie White.
Thank you, that was carried 10 to 1. Thank you, everybody. I believe that concludes the procedure for this evening. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you to anyone that is listening. Have a